When a president and his lieutenants are suspected of violating U.S. law to grasp the reins of power, it is the job of law enforcement to do something about it. We look to investigators, prosecutors, and jury members to determine the truth, to stand for the rule of law. We on the sidelines can guess and speculate, debating outcomes we cannot know. Cable news will even sell tickets. But when a president attempts to keep the reins of power by sidelining investigators and prosecutors, intimidating them, it is Congress's job to do something about that. The execution of that job, a vital test, may be the ultimate test of the true State of the Union. Now, President Trump denies that he ordered Special Counsel Robert Mueller fired. But remember, he fired Acting Attorney General Sally Yates. He fired FBI Director Jim Comey, who refused to pledge his loyalty to the president. And he tried to stop Attorney General Jeff Sessions' recusal from the Russia investigation. Just this afternoon, NBC reported that FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, a target of President Trump's public wrath, is stepping aside ahead of his retirement in March. Mr. McCabe, you may remember, was reportedly asked by the president who he voted for and grilled about donations to McCabe's wife's political campaign. This just days after reports that Mr. Trump still talks about getting rid of Mueller's boss, Deputy U.S. Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. That Mr. Trump pushed to make Sessions resign, and that the president now wants a classified congressional memo released trashing top FBI officials who can corroborate Comey's testimony. The Washington Post reports that Mr. Trump hopes the memo will raise questions about those officials and about Rosenstein that will justify removing them, which would, of course, clear the way for Mr. Trump and or his allies to appoint loyal replacements, loyal to them. There are two bills in Congress aimed at protecting Mueller, but we have to face the fact that they're probably pantomimes, dangerous distractions with slim hope of passing. Listen to some of our elected representatives on their sworn duty to uphold the Constitution and take a hard stand in Mueller's defense.
There have been a number of bipartisan bills proposed in the Senate that would attempt to protect the special counsel from firing by the president. And you said in December that, quote, you haven't seen the need for legislation protecting Mueller. Do you see the need now?
It probably wouldn't hurt for us to pass one of those bills.
Do you have confidence in Bob Mueller?
Yes.
100%.
I have confidence in Mueller. I have questions about others within the FBI and the DOJ, especially what's come out in these texts.
Would you be open if there is a bill that protects, there's a couple of bills in the Senate. One would be having a 3-judge panel review a decision if the president did fire Mueller to see if it was done on fair grounds. Would you be open if that bill is attached to the budget bill? Would you support that? Would you let that go through versus...
Look, I think we should focus on the budget because military needs their funding. Why are we playing other games with something else?
What's your reaction to the president's reported order to fire Bob Mueller? How much does that concern you?
Again, that's New York talk. I look at it strictly as the New York language that they have, which is different than most other people. But
honestly, how is it here? How is that New York talk? I'm curious.
What makes this, if it isn't already, it will, a constitutional crisis is not the potential law-breaking itself. It is that when law enforcement are targeted by the chief executive in this way, those members of Congress you just heard are the last redress offered by our Constitution. But we've been here before, when Congress rose to the challenge during the Nixon period and the widespread criminal conspiracy known as Watergate. President Trump may not even mention the ongoing investigations into whether he and or those close to him conspired with the Russians to influence the election, but we have to consider it in assessing the true state of the union today. In the months and even years ahead, The state of our country's union may well depend on what these investigations conclude and how we as a people, as a country, react to it. The president can read from his teleprompter script all he wants about grand hopes and plans. But until the questions about Russian influence and interference and the suspected crimes by Americans, including possibly the president, are answered, until that happens, our union will be marked by toxic levels of anxiety and uncertainty. There are, of course, other fault lines running through our nation on racial and religious bigotry, immigration, economic inequality, and education. The list is long. But, wrongly or rightly, questions of possible high crimes in high places are front and center at the moment, and will continue to be until those questions are answered and we know how Congress and the American people rise to the moment. The president can continue to argue that it's really no big deal, all fake news. And a minority of Americans will continue to believe him. But as Abraham Lincoln supposedly once remarked, you can fool some of the people some of the time. You can't fool all of the people all of the time. The multifaceted criminal investigation swirling around the president, his family, and some of his advisors is a big deal. And however it ends, however we end it, will be a driving factor in determining the state of our union, now and possibly for generations to come. My closing thoughts on the State of the Union as a speech to the nation right after this break.